Hello, this is Miss Schrader. Today we are going to talk about another Impressionist artist, John Singer Sargent, who you can see in the picture here. My students, you are going to be taking some notes. When you're done, you're going to be giving me 10 strong sentences about what you learn about John Singer Sargent. All right, so John Singer Sargent was an American, but his parents were very wealthy. They spent their lives traveling around, mostly Europe, trying to find some way to improve his mother's health. And so he grew up in Europe, was affected by it, and became a very well known artist of the period. Sargent has been referred to as the leading portrait painter of his generation. He was born in 1856 and died in 1925. So late 19th, early 20th century. Became very famous for painting wealthy people, but also for painting a lot of society situations. He was very involved in the Paris salons of the late 19th century, and these salons had a big effect on Impressionist art. The painting you're looking at is called The Daughters of Edward Darley Bolt. This was done in 1882. Remember, the idea with the Impressionists is you go out and you actually paint what the scene is without taking sketches beforehand. So he would have gone into their house and done these little girls just there. But Sargent is most famous actually for this painting. This painting is called The Portrait of Madame X. This was done in 1884. It is currently in the Metropolitan Museum of New York. Um, and one of the exciting things, this lady, she's an American actually. Um, and she was a famous local beauty. Her husband was a banker, and he had seen her around. Sargent had seen her around and was one of many people who wanted to paint her and eventually got her to agree. So there's no commission. She did not pay him to come and paint her. And this is a photograph of the woman. Her name is Virginie Amélie Avignon Gautreau. And as I said, she's an American married to a French banker. She was born in 1859 and died in 1915. And at that time, yeah, some of the rich women would have been referred to as great beauties of society, and she was considered one at that time. And so a lot of people wanted to paint her. So when the painting was done, it was shown in the Paris Salon of 1884. And all the artists were saying, it's fabulous, it's so gorgeous, she looks amazing. And a lot of the non artists were horrified, particularly the women. The women were saying, here is beautiful, this is awful. One person actually told the woman, your dress is falling off. Why would you think this is a good likeness of you? As you look at it, one of the things that Sargent was doing intentionally was we got the woman wearing a black dress, and her skin is powdered to look extremely white. Yes, the dress is sort of slipping downward. It's a very sexual idea to it. She's actually looking away from the artist as though she doesn't think any of this is very, very important. She does look like she's an extremely fashionable woman with this very elegant sort of a dress on. And so some people were really outraged by the sexual nature of this painting. Here we have a photograph of Sargent with the painting in his studio. Um, it's been described as there is an assertion of showiness in the expansion of white skin from her high forehead down to her gracious neck, shoulders, and arms. So this big contrast between the whiteness of her skin, which was powdered, and the blackness of the dress. The fact that the dress at the top is fitting very snugly to her body, whereas the skirt kind of puffs out, and you can tell the skirt is super layered and things like that. And so, once again, the artists are just loving this. They think it is such a gorgeous painting, but a lot of the citizens didn't so much like it. This is a sketch that Sargent did in preparation to do the painting. Once again, notice that she's wearing the same dress. She's sort of lounging here on a sofa. And there are definitely sexual tinges to this piece as well. Because Sargent had not been commissioned to do this by Virginie and her husband, he himself kept the painting. He showed it in his studio throughout the bulk of his life, later on selling it to the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. Uh, Virginie actually felt that the scandal ruined her reputation. She could no longer be a great beauty in Paris, and she and her husband left Paris and began to live in some of the smaller cities of France. This is another painting of Virginie. This was done later by Antonio de la Gandara. It was done in 1898. To me, this is very much similar to the Madame X painting, but it got much less controversy, possibly because the dress is a little less contrasting with the skin, even though it does have a low back. It does pretty much wrap around her completely. The pose is very similar. At first, I thought she was holding a cigarette, and I would have thought that was very controversial, but actually, she's holding a fan. Madame X gets a position in this piece about legendary paintings. I'm not certain about the one with the dog, but the rest of them either we will be discussing or we have discussed. There's a book called The Greater Journey by David McCullough. He's a historian, and it talks about a lot of the artists, the American artists, particularly in Paris in the later part of the 19th century, and a huge amount of time is spent on John Singer Sargent and the portrait of Madame X. So if you wanted to learn more, this would be a good book to read. Okay, my students, I would be interested if you think this is a, controversial portrait or whether it should be or not. But also, you are giving me 10 strong sentences about what you found educational and important and enjoyable about this painting called The Portrait of Madame X by John Singer Sargent. Thank you.